What if a stroke doesn't begin with slurred speech or a drooping face? What if, instead, it begins with a shadow falling over one eye, a strange dizziness you brush off as fatigue, or a sharp headache that comes and goes so you go on with your day, not realizing your brain is sounding an alarm? These aren't just rare exceptions. They are real experiences shared by real people. People who, in many cases, didn't recognize what was happening until it was almost too late. Take Kimberly, who felt numbness on just half of her nose and tongue. She thought it was odd, but not serious. She went to bed. By the next morning, her entire left side was weak. She had suffered what doctors called a dual mixed stroke. Then there's Sharon, who noticed her vision dimming in one eye, as if a shade was slowly being pulled down. It lifted later that day, so she didn't think much of it. That is, until the stroke hit. Stories like these are more common than we think, and they all share one painful truth. If only they had known what to look for, things might have turned out differently. You see, strokes don't always play by the book. They don't always follow the well-known FAST formula. Face drooping, arm weakness, speech trouble, and time to call 911. Sometimes the signs are subtle, strange, easy to dismiss. And for those over 60, recognizing those strange signs could mean the difference between a full recovery and a life forever changed. So, if you think strokes only strike with drama and obvious symptoms, think again. This video could be the wake-up call you didn't know you needed. Because when it comes to stroke, time is brain. And knowledge, especially the kind you're about to hear, can save yours. Stay with us. Before we dive into the unusual signs, let's take a quick moment to understand what a stroke really is. A stroke happens when blood flow to a part of your brain is suddenly cut off. That can happen in one of two main ways. The first, and most common, is when a clot blocks a vessel. That's called an ischemic stroke. The second is when a blood vessel bursts and bleeds into the brain. That's a hemorrhagic stroke. Both are medical emergencies. Why? Because your brain cells need a steady flow of oxygen-rich blood to survive. When that flow stops, even for a few minutes, those cells begin to die. And once brain cells are lost, they don't come back. That's why strokes are the leading cause of serious long-term disability in the United States. And sadly, the numbers are rising. In 2019, the stroke death rate in the U.S. was 31 per 100,000 people. By 2021, that number had jumped to over 41. But here's the most surprising part. Strokes don't just happen to old people. In fact, nearly 4 in 10 people hospitalized for stroke are under the age of 65. That means even if you feel healthy or young at heart, you're not automatically safe. And the damage isn't just physical. A stroke can take away your ability to walk, talk, remember names, or even recognize loved ones. It can rob you of your independence in a single afternoon. So instead of thinking, "It won't happen to me," the smarter question is, "Would I know it if it did?" Because when you know what to watch for, even the strange, less obvious signs, you're already one step ahead. Have you ever felt like a curtain was slowly being drawn over one of your eyes? For some people, that's not just an odd moment. It's the very first sign of a stroke. We often think of strokes as attacking movement or speech, but they can also strike the parts of your brain responsible for sight. When blood flow is disrupted to those areas, it can cause sudden vision problems. You might lose vision in one eye, or both. It might come on slowly or all at once, and sometimes It disappears just as quickly as it came. That's what happened to a woman who described it as a shade being pulled down over her left eye. It lifted later that day, so she didn't think it was serious. But soon after, she suffered a stroke. Another person shared their experience with eye strokes, caused by a clot blocking blood flow to the retina. These episodes can lead to complete blackout in the affected eye, and, if untreated, may cause permanent blindness. Now here's what makes this dangerous. Many people confuse these symptoms with eye strain or migraines. But while migraines build up gradually, stroke-related vision loss is often abrupt and painless. So, instead of assuming, "I'll just sleep it off," what if you treated sudden vision loss like the emergency it might be? Because when it comes to your eyesight and your brain, waiting could cost you more than clarity. It could cost you your life. Have you ever stood up and felt the room spin? Or tried to walk across your kitchen and suddenly needed to hold onto the counter just to stay upright? Now imagine that happening without warning, and not going away. That kind of dizziness or loss of balance isn't just uncomfortable. It could be your brain trying to tell you something serious. Vertigo, the sensation that the world is spinning around you, and sudden unsteadiness are two signs that a stroke might be affecting the cerebellum or brainstem, areas that control coordination and movement. And because these symptoms don't always come with pain or paralysis, they're often brushed off. One woman shared how she suddenly felt like she was falling down a well. She managed to crawl to her bed and lay there for hours, unable to stand or reach her phone. She wasn't dizzy from dehydration. She wasn't tired. She was having a stroke. It's easy to think, maybe I just moved too fast. Or, it's probably my inner ear acting up. But stroke-related vertigo is different. It comes on fast, often with no obvious cause, and it can hit while you're sitting still. So instead of assuming it'll pass, ask yourself, could this be something more? Because catching this sign early means you still have time to act. But if you wait, thinking it's nothing, you might not get that second chance to stand up straight again. What if, all of a sudden, you couldn't make sense of your surroundings? What if words felt foreign, or your own thoughts became hard to follow? Confusion might sound like something that happens gradually, as we age. But in the case of a stroke, it can come on in an instant, and without warning. This kind of confusion is more than just forgetfulness. It can feel like the world has shifted. Some people describe it as if they were falling down a well, or watching reality from the outside, unable to grasp what's real and what's not. One woman shared how she couldn't understand a simple conversation. Another tried to speak, but couldn't find the words. She knew what she wanted to say, but the connection between thought and speech had vanished. These are not symptoms to brush off. When a stroke strikes the areas of the brain responsible for language and comprehension, it can lead to aphasia, a condition where communication breaks down, and it can be terrifying. Now here's the danger. Because there's no pain, many people don't realize it's serious. They might think they're just tired or under stress. But instead of blaming brain fog or old age, what if you consider the possibility that your brain is losing oxygen? Because in a stroke, every second counts, and recognizing sudden confusion for what it really is, a red flag, could mean the difference between making a full recovery and losing the ability to communicate altogether. Have you ever had a headache that felt different, sharper, stronger, and completely out of the blue? Now imagine that pain hitting like a lightning bolt. No buildup, no warning, just sudden, intense pressure, unlike anything you've felt before. That's how many people describe the headache that comes with a hemorrhagic stroke. One woman shared how she had a headache for 3 days straight, but kept going, dropping off her grandson at school, hitting the gym, trying to stay normal. She didn't know that something was bleeding inside her brain. Unlike a tension headache or even a migraine, a stroke-related headache is often described as the worst headache of my life. It can come with nausea, vomiting, or changes in vision. But sometimes it's just pain, piercing, relentless, and unexplained. Here's the catch. Because we're used to treating headaches with over-the-counter pills and a glass of water, it's easy to minimize them. But when a blood vessel bursts in the brain, the pressure builds fast, and that pressure can destroy brain tissue within minutes. So instead of thinking, it's just stress, ask yourself, could this be something more? Because treating a stroke-induced headache like any other pain is a gamble you can't afford. Acting fast could mean the difference between a short hospital stay and a life-changing injury. When your brain speaks in pain, it's not asking for silence. It's asking for help. When was the last time you felt sick to your stomach for no reason at all? No spoiled food, no flu going around, just a wave of nausea that hit you out of nowhere. Most of us wouldn't jump to stroke when we're reaching for a trash can or curling up with stomach pain. But maybe we should. Sudden nausea or vomiting, especially when there's no clear cause, can be one of the first signs of a stroke. It's often linked to strokes in the brainstem, the area that controls basic body functions like breathing, balance, and, yes, your ability to keep food down. One viewer described it vividly. The room spun so badly she could barely read the numbers on her phone to dial 911. She vomited in her apartment, in the ambulance, even in the ER, despite receiving multiple anti-nausea medications. And for hours, doctors weren't sure what was happening. It turned out she'd had a stroke. Here's why this symptom is dangerous. We're used to blaming it on something we ate, or maybe a virus going around. But stroke-related nausea is sudden. It doesn't usually come with fever or chills, and it often pairs with other neurological symptoms, like dizziness or a headache. So instead of brushing it off, ask, why now? Why would you suddenly feel like throwing up, especially if you're not sick? Because recognizing this unusual symptom for what it is, an urgent warning, might save precious time. And in a stroke, time is brain. Have you ever walked outside on a sunny day and felt like the light was almost too much to bear? Now, picture that happening indoors, with regular lights, without warning, and no history of migraines or eye trouble. That kind of extreme sensitivity to light, what doctors call photophobia, can be more than just a nuisance. In some cases, it's your brain waving a red flag that something is seriously wrong. Photophobia isn't commonly listed as a stroke symptom, but it shows up more often than you might think. It can be linked to strokes that involve bleeding or swelling in the brain. When pressure builds in areas that control vision or affect the optic nerves, even soft lighting can feel like a spotlight. And for some, that discomfort is unbearable. One stroke survivor shared how she now wears sunglasses almost every day, even indoors. The light makes her feel sick. It's not about vanity. It's about survival. Now, we're used to thinking that light sensitivity means a migraine is coming. But here's the key difference. Migraine photophobia often builds over time. Stroke-related photophobia tends to be sudden, severe, and persistent. No warning, no easing into it. So instead of saying, "I just need to lie down," ask yourself, is this my brain reacting to something much bigger? Because when your senses go into overdrive without a clear reason, it could be your nervous system in crisis. And catching that signal early could mean you get the help you need before lasting damage is done. What if your voice started to sound unfamiliar, even to you? What if you opened your mouth to speak, and the words just wouldn't come out right? We all know that slurred speech is a classic sign of a stroke. But here's what many people don't realize. It doesn't always sound like a dramatic stumble over words. Sometimes, it's as subtle as forgetting names mid-sentence, using the wrong word without realizing it, or feeling like your tongue just won't cooperate. One viewer described an odd sensation, numbness in half of her tongue and nose. She went to sleep thinking it was minor. By morning, she had full weakness on her left side. The change in speech wasn't loud or slurred. It was strange, off, and it was the earliest sign of a serious stroke. Here's why this matters. We're often quick to excuse speech glitches. Maybe it's fatigue. Maybe we're just having a senior moment. But when your words feel stuck, scrambled, or sluggish, and there's no clear reason, that's a moment to pay attention. Because a stroke affecting the brain's language centers doesn't always roar in like thunder. Sometimes it whispers. And instead of brushing it off with, "I'm just tired today," what if you asked, "Is my brain struggling to speak for a reason?" When you notice something unusual in how you're talking, or even thinking about how to talk, take it seriously. Because clear speech isn't just a gift. It's a signal. And when that signal goes fuzzy, your brain may be calling for help. Have you ever thought, "I'm too young for a stroke," or "that only happens to older men"? It's a common belief, and a dangerous one. The truth is, strokes don't check your age. They don't ask about your gender. And they don't always follow the rules we expect them to. One mother shared a heartbreaking story. Her daughter passed away just 2 weeks before her 29th birthday. She had warning signs, a headache, vision issues, confusion, but no one suspected a stroke. By the time help arrived, it was too late. And she's not alone. According to the CDC, nearly 38% of people hospitalized for stroke are under the age of 65. That includes people in their 50s, 40s, even 20s. Some had no history of high blood pressure, no smoking, no red flags. For women, the risk can be even harder to recognize. That's because the symptoms they report are often vague or dismissed. Fatigue, trouble thinking clearly, a strange sense of weakness. These aren't always the classic signs we see in medical ads, but they're just as real. Instead of looking for dramatic symptoms, we need to look for change. A shift in speech, a sense that something is off, a gut feeling that shouldn't be ignored. Because believing "I'm not the type" doesn't protect you. But being aware, that just might. No matter your age, no matter your gender. If something feels wrong, act like it is. Call for help. Ask the hard questions. Because stroke doesn't wait. And neither should you. What would you do if someone next to you started slurring their words, or suddenly looked confused? Would you know how to respond, or would you hesitate, hoping it would pass? When it comes to stroke, there's no room for waiting. Every second counts. The faster you act, the better the chances of recovery. And sometimes, the only difference between walking again or being in a wheelchair is a phone call made minutes sooner. Here's what you need to remember. Fast. F. Face drooping. Ask the person to smile. Does one side sag? A. Arm weakness. Can they raise both arms? Does one drift downward? S. Speech difficulty. Ask them to say a simple sentence. Do the words sound strange or slurred? T. Time to call 911. Don't drive them. Don't wait to see if it improves. Call immediately. But here's the twist. Not every stroke looks like the fast symptoms. That's why this video focused on the unusual signs, like dizziness, vision loss, or nausea. So, if you notice anything odd, something that feels off or out of the blue, don't second-guess yourself. Don't wait for a second opinion. Get help now. It's better to be wrong and safe than right and too late. Instead of wondering if it's serious, treat it like it is. Because if it turns out to be a stroke, your quick action could be the reason someone gets their life back. And if that someone is you, you'll be glad you didn't wait. So now that you know the warning signs, what can you actually do to stay ahead of a stroke? Here's the good news. Up to 80% of strokes are preventable. That means there are real, practical steps you can take today, right now, that may help you avoid becoming a statistic. It starts with the basics. Control your blood pressure. High blood pressure is the #1 risk factor for stroke. If you haven't had it checked recently, make that your priority. And if it's high, work with your doctor to bring it down. Watch your blood sugar. Diabetes can quietly damage your blood vessels over time. Managing your levels doesn't just help your heart, it protects your brain. Quit smoking. If you still smoke, now is the time to stop. Smoking doubles your risk of stroke, and it's never too late to benefit from quitting. Move your body. You don't need to run marathons, but daily movement, walking, stretching, gardening, keeps your circulation strong and your blood pressure in check. Eat for your brain. Choose foods that lower cholesterol and inflammation. Think leafy greens, berries, nuts, whole grains, and healthy fats. Sleep and manage stress. Chronic stress and poor sleep don't just wear you down, they affect your brain's blood flow too. So instead of thinking prevention is complicated, what if you saw it as a set of small choices, stacked daily, that protect your future? Because reducing your risk isn't about perfection. It's about awareness, about intention, about knowing that each healthy decision could be the one that keeps your brain safe. And that's a power worth using. So now you know. The unusual signs, the quiet warnings, the simple actions that can save a life. What will you do with that knowledge? Because maybe it's not just about protecting yourself. Maybe someone you love needs to hear this too. So don't keep it to yourself. Share this video. Talk about what you've learned. Send it to a friend, a sibling, a neighbor. You never know whose life you might change, just by starting the conversation. And if you found this helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell. We've got more life-saving information coming your way. Stay safe, stay aware, and as always, thank you for watching.